That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Trigger Warning, the fourth film and English language debut of Mouly Surya, which Netflix is dumping on us June 21st, 2024. Today.
Do you know the director's other films?
I saw her previous film, which was in the Cannes Film Festival and Director's Fortnight in 2017, Marlena the Murderer in 4 acts, and it is infinitely more interesting than this film.
What is Trigger Warning about? A skilled Special Forces commando takes ownership of her father's bar after he suddenly dies, and soon finds herself at odds with a violent gang running rampant in her hometown. What's your pull quote?
It's still unclear what kind of living human Jessica Alba could realistically portray, but it's certainly not a hard-drinking Special Forces commando with questionable taste in men in the unpleasantly dull Trigger Warning, which should instead require an alert for being offensively pointless.
Yeah, well, I don't even know what I think the title of the movie means, but that's a good one. Mine. If you're surprised to learn Jessica Alba is not able to pull off being a skilled Special Forces commando, you might find Trigger Warning entertaining. This movie is terrible. There isn't a single thing about this film that I thought was done well.
No.
The writing, the story, the acting, the casting, the cinematography. It has that Netflix like HD green screen look, but then this one does something I haven't seen before, which it looks like it has one of those like shitty Instagram filters that make the border look smoky. Mm-hmm. There's like this smoky,
And it's too bad because some of the cast and crew, including the director herself, I think have had much better films to their credit. The cinematographer Zoe White, who's done a lot of work in interesting indie films such as Catfight with Anne Heche and Sandra Oh, or many episodes of The Handmaid's Tale, I think this does her no favors either. The screenwriters, there's 3 listed. John Brancato, who wrote stuff in the 90s like The Game and The Net and Catwoman, which is 06. Josh Olson, credited A History of Violence, and Halley Gross, who did several episodes of Westworld. I don't know what went wrong where.
Within the first 30 minutes, I thought, oh, this feels like a Roadhouse ripoff. Mm-hmm. And it's not by the end. But then I was thinking, I wish it would have been, because maybe it would have been at least like amusing. Because this movie is playing it seriously.
Yes, and the spec script apparently was being shopped around back in 2016. So, and I don't know if that's where it's trying really hard, but it feels very random in this version, trying to get into the politics and the racial politics.
We'll talk about that. Let me just try to tell the story. Jessica Alba is a skilled, I still can't stop saying it, a skilled Special Forces commando. And the film opens with her in Syria on some mission.
Operation Alice 116.
When she gets notification her father was killed in a mining accident. So she hightails it back home to Creation. That's the name of the town. It's filmed in New Mexico. I assumed it was in New Mexico. It looks like the rural desert area. And she goes to find out what happened, and she suspects that there's foul play at hand. But her dad owned a bar, and I don't even know how you could call it a bar. It looks like a treehouse that would have been in like the Little Rascals TV show.
When we pull up to, you're like, oh, this looks like Mad Max.
It doesn't look like a structure that anyone would certify as safe to inhabit. But
it's called Maria's.
It's called Maria's.
Named for her. Her last name is Parker. I don't believe that her father had that surname.
We need to talk about all of that. But just to wrap it up, because this film drags on way too long.
Yes.
But we find out that she used to date this guy who's now the sheriff.
Mm-hmm. Mark Webber, playing Jesse.
And he has a brother named Elvis.
Played by Jake Weary.
Who I thought looked like if you mixed Joshua Jackson and Theo Vaughn. But then you said he looked like if Adam Lambert were a Proud Boy. Mm-hmm. And then their dad is a senator, played by
Anthony Michael Hall.
And this trio is so odd because the sheriff seems like kind of a decent guy who knows his brother and father ain't shit, but he kind of turns a blind eye to it. The dad is this ultra-conservative senator who says he's white, but then also says his grandfather was Native American, but can't tell you from what tribe.
Like Elizabeth Warren?
And then...
Is that her name?
Yes. Yeah. And then the brother, Elvis, he's running weapons, because apparently there's a military depot near Creation, New Mexico, maybe. And that's the crux of the conflict in the story, is that the father was killed because the father owned some caves on his property that are connected to the military depot. So he was killed so that this brother could run these weapons and sell them on the black market. So Jessica Alba, I want to say Albacore, figures it out and confronts them. Like, I'm going to turn you in. I have proof that you did it. And they torture her.
Well.
And this is at the point where you would think the film is over, and we still have 40 minutes left.
Oh, yeah.
And then we get this scene. This movie feels like a lot of movies, but this part of the film feels like The Mother.
With Jennifer Lopez. Also, or Lou with Allison Janney. Two terrible Netflix films, yeah.
Where she has to recover, and then it's like, okay, she recovers, and then she goes to take down the bad guys. She does. The last one standing is the sheriff. And instead of turning himself in, now that his dad and brother have been made, he kills himself with a grenade. Mm-hmm. And then the end of the film is we flash forward a little and we see that, we hear on the radio, like, now that the senator has been found out, who's going to run for senator. And earlier in the film it had been implied that maybe she would.
Uh-huh.
The end.
Don't need that.
Also, we're told that because they're near a military depot, some of the military people are asking about her and like what she does because they all think she's a spy. This story is so stupid.
Some like Mata Hari. The three men, the family, the Swans, Senator Swann, could have had a nice Proust reference in there. It could have been called Swann's Way.
I'm just going to go through my notes because I have so many. I'm like, is Jessica Alba the new J-Lo? Because when she's in Syria, that opening scene is so crunchy. It looks like all these Netflix action sequences where they're like green screen, and Jessica Alba doing fight choreo looks like maybe like every day that they were shooting, maybe like for an hour before they ran through the few moves, and then she does them, and then it all looks sped up.
It looked like 90s Steven Seagal choreography. I think it was that bad. On top of J-Lo, it's also giving me Megan Fox vibes in that, what was that terrible film with the big cats? Prey?
Oh, yeah, with the lion, yeah. During that opening scene, at first I thought, oh, it's going to be like a comedy because she's in this shootout and she looks ridiculous pointing this machine gun out of a truck in the desert. And then all of a sudden we hear her phone ringing, and it's her buddy from her hometown trying to get in contact with her about her dad. And then we get this fight sequence where it's like the truck flips in the middle of the desert. There's nowhere to hide. And somehow she hides and takes over the bad guy. But then one of her fellow like soldiers is about to kill one of the bad guys. And that exchange was insane.
Oh, yes.
The dialogue within the first 10 minutes is just unbelievable. And then the guy who breaks up the fight is telling her, like, you can't solve every problem with a knife. So foreshadowing that that's what she's going to do in this movie.
Spider, played by Tone Bell. I looked him up. He's a comedian as well.
Oh. Well, she gets this call and then immediately goes from fighting bad guys in Syria to creation. And she shows up to the sheriff's office in full hair and makeup. Uh-huh. And that's when I thought, oh, she's trying to be like J-Lo now. Like,
to be fair, I guess the sheriff is her ex.
Okay, maybe that she was trying to be cute. Speaking of that, there could be a game every time you see Jessica Alba smoke a cigarette, smoke a joint, or drink liquor from the bottle.
From the mouth to the bottle.
Like, yeah, she takes it straight to the head numerous times. It's kind of wild.
But in the narrative world, like in days at a time, and hard drinking like that has an effect.
She doesn't look right for this role at all. There were so many people I thought would have been better in this role.
Michelle Rodriguez.
Even like Selma Hayek would have made more sense.
Who is in a terrible action film of this ilk called Everly about a decade ago.
And I'm naming Latina actresses because a big plot point in this film is about her heritage, which I find interesting because I recall earlier in Jessica Alba's career, she was criticized for not embracing being Mexican. And so I find it funny that in this film, the person playing this lead role, there's a lot of emphasis on her being Latina. Because we get we get flashbacks to her as a kid, and it's like her dad talking to her in Spanish with this La Llorona song playing more than once.
Yes.
And we get her dad talking to her in Spanish. We never hear her speak Spanish. Then we get the senator. There's a really awkward sequence where he's talking about how he's not racist. The son's talking about how they could have, she and his brother could have had good, like, nice mixed children. And then the senator talking about how Latinos are conservative. But then he's saying, I'm confused about what Latinx means. Can you explain it? And then it just never goes anywhere. Then we hear Elvis and his old racist ass buddies use the word spick a few times. I'm just so confused. Then Jessica Alba's look changes to try to maybe look more like her mother, who we see a portrait of her. So she now all of a sudden she has like pigtails and folklorico earrings, and she's wearing like crocheted tops. It's a choice.
The way that they eventually start screaming expletives at her makes this appear like an exploitation film, but it reminded me of Shelley Winters in Cleopatra Jones, who screams at her many a time, calling her a black bitch. That's what this feels like in this film.
It's awkward. So the casting, the sheriff, Jessica Alba's ex-boyfriend, is not the kind of man you would expect to date Jessica Alba. However, another guy in town who she grew up with, who's used to be a child actor, right?
Gabriel Basso, who was recently in Hillbilly Elegy.
Who's much more handsome and seems more appropriate for her. But when Jessica Alba gets back to her dad's bar, it's like she's like sleeping in the bar, and it's a super rainy night. It's totally dark, and someone breaks into the bar. And it looks like they're there to like do damage. So she assaults them, and right as she's about to stab this person like in the neck, she sees that it's her little friend, that guy, the child actor guy. Jesse is his name.
Mike. Jesse is the sheriff.
You're right. Mike. And then she's like, what are you doing here? I almost killed you. Oh, well, I came to feed the lizard.
Which is an iguana.
A big ass iguana who we don't even see till the end of the film. But like, you really showed up in the pouring rain to feed this iguana? It couldn't wait till the morning. Like, wasn't that ridiculous?
It definitely was, yes.
Okay, so she delivers all of her lines like she's a little girl who's embarrassed.
Which is, yes, it's like J-Lo. Mm-hmm.
Then when she finds out that, so she goes to visit the cave where her dad died, and she surmises that it can't have been an accident because she finds these rocks with pock marks on them, and she explains that the way the explosion occurred, it couldn't have happened that way because her dad was an ex-Green Beret, so he would know how to handle explosives. They just wouldn't accidentally go off. So that's what clues her into it being a problem. Then one night at the bar, Elvis and his buddies show up, and she sees that they have a stolen truck. She follows them, and she figures out everything really quickly. The pacing's so odd because this thing runs out of steam at the hour mark.
She's calling Spider to help because he's looking up information about,
he's like a tech guru,
like what Elvis is doing on the dark web, and he's like, just follow all these people around. There's a desolate area, and she is just always like, it feels like several yards behind when she's following them. Like they would notice that you were doing that.
Then she ends up hooking up with, who does she have sex with?
Her ex, Jesse.
The sheriff.
Teresa Palmer's husband.
They're sitting drinking with their back. They're sitting at the bar with their backs to each other, and she's again taking liquor to the head. And then we cut to them in bed post coitus, and she's smoking a joint. We didn't need that.
I mean, everybody needs love.
It's not until the 43-minute mark that we see her character cry over her dad. I thought that was weird.
Well, it doesn't.
She didn't cry when she found out. She didn't cry at the sheriff's office. She didn't cry when she went to the bar.
We all grieve differently. It doesn't help that Jessica Alba can't really emote.
She also can't trail people. The entire movie in this small town is her like trying to do recon, and she's just constantly like lurking around, too close for comfort.
There are so many scenes where she is skulking behind things, and it's the pigtails, I think, that kill me as she's running.
Well, and then at a point she's wearing like a big leather trench coat. It reminded me of like Mexican Shaft. I just don't know what she was doing. The license plate of the truck, one of the guy's trucks says pew pew, which makes me laugh. Oh my gosh, the scene where they come, and this is like before the halfway point. the dad's bar is set on fire. Very aggressively. I'm so confused why they think it's a good idea. This trifecta, the Swann family, the Swann dynasty of creation, New Mexico. Why would the dad, who's a senator, a very vocal conservative senator, why would he want to be involved with his son who's running arms illegally and selling them on the black market?
Well, or be much more subtle about it.
And then his son who's a sheriff. It just seems so stupid. It would seem more like the dad would want to get rid of the son, not like try to be involved and cover it up.
But he used the illegally got gains to pay for his campaign.
Speaking of money, we're told that someone wants to offer Jessica Alba well, first he goes, I have some friends who will pay $3 million for your 5 acres of land in the middle of nowhere. And then she kind of goes like, And he goes, okay, 5 million. What? I mean, it's so odd to me because if that land is worth a lot because it's near some mining or something, don't know why that wasn't a part of the plot in the beginning,
right,
that the dad has this valuable land. And then the fact that they're offering so much after the fact, it just seems like a random number to come up with.
Well, and also, did she just... I guess I'm quite ignorant of the fact. Could she just recuse herself from duty for an indefinite amount of time?
Well, because I would imagine that if you're in the armed forces and you have a death, you could get excused for a period. But then she's just transplanted herself back home to solve this mystery.
Yeah. And, well, right away, Mark Webber's like, you're not going to come run Maria's? No.
No, I work for the CIA. I'm a fucking spy, or excuse me, a spy. But she, so then the Swanns capture her, take her to jail, and they're torturing her. They have her hanging, and they're beating her up, asking her for the proof. And the proof is like, the dad had installed cameras on the outside of his bar, so he has visual evidence of like the arms running. And I just thought that was all ridiculous. And then, of course, she overtakes them, beats them all up, but they're able to get away. And that's when she ends up at her little friend's house, Jesse. Right? That's his name?
Mike.
And then another side plot is that Mike is like growing marijuana in his basement. So his mom, I think, is a nurse or a doctor, and he lives at home with his mother. So in their basement, they have a hospital / marijuana lab, hydroponics. I don't know what they're doing down there, but it's quite elaborate. And that's where she goes to recuperate for 3 days. Didn't that feel so pointless?
Yes.
I don't think we needed the opening scene, seeing her be a spy. I feel like we could have gotten flashbacks or something to her being in the CIA. I just think that was a waste of time. And then also her having to recuperate for 3 days.
Well, it allows for a greater sense of mystery.
Because then when she finally gets out of bed, she goes, how long have I been in bed? 3 days. Well, can you help me up? I need to pee. I think you should lay down. Well, unless you want me to pee in the bed.
Where have you been?
Where have you been peeing for 3 days? Then she gets up, pees, and then we cut to the next scene. She's in her Mexican shaft drag, and they go to some old man's place to get weapons. And then we get a scene where she's wielding a machete.
Which was funny because she is in the film Machete.
That looks so ridiculous.
It did.
Like that was the first time she had ever picked up a machete.
She's wielding it like a samurai as the sun descends on the horizon, and she goes, I like it.
This dialogue is so terrible. Before, when Elvis and his boys go to Mike's house, assuming Jessica Alba is there, and they threaten the mom. They ransack the house, point a gun at the mother. But these are people who grew up together.
They butt him in the head with a rifle.
But then after they do all that, they're like, all right, man, see you later. It's no big deal. But they see blood, traces of blood in the house. So it's well, clearly she's here because she escaped from the jail. And Mike says, no, she's not here. Okay, well, if you see her, call me. And then they take his weed and leave. They didn't even look for her. And then we see the trap door down at the basement. I thought that was so ridiculous. But when Elvis leaves, Mike goes, oh, Elvis has left the building. Oh. And then his mom is hitting. It's almost like a sitcom.
It's so
corny.
And it could have been quite tongue-in-cheek with a little extra detailing, if they'd used that Carpenter song, On Top of the World, Looking Down on Creation,
Sure.
There could have been a way to make this kind of hokey, like Roadhouse.
And then the sheriff and his brother are digging like for missiles, and then at one point they're like, "This is some Timothy McVeigh level shit." What? This dialogue's terrible.
Would these two dum-dums know about that?
Then Jessica talking about the senator at one point, she's like, "Why are politicians such liars?" Everything out of her mouth. Okay, so there's a showdown, and then she is able to escape, but she gets hurt, like shot in the arm or hurt. So then she ends up running to the military depot. And so she's pretending, like acting as if she's hurt, like really badly, trying to distract them so she can take down the sheriff. And you made a funny comment because it's like her pretending to be hurt didn't seem any different than the actual acting she's doing in this movie. Like, it was all real crunchy.
You know, I don't know. Was it Frank DeCaro who made? We were listening to what radio station was that?
Q Radio, yeah.
And there was the noise of a porpoise, and I think it's Frank DeCaro goes, "Oh, Jessica Alba's here," and that's what I always think of.
Yeah. Okay, so after it was all said and done, the bar gets rebuilt. We get a little montage of the bar being, and that bar still looked, even the new version of the dad's bar looked rickety. It looked like like one of those platform sets on Waterworld. Mm-hmm. Ugh.
Or like something in the Everglades that's slowly sinking into the swamp.
The only point in this movie where I was kind of amused and giggled is at the end when her little handsome friend Mike is on FaceTime, because now he's going to run the bar. And he's like, "I need you to make a decision. I have a couple paint swatches here. One is called like Dirty Salmon, and the other one's called Grandmother's Chin. And he's like, "Oh, wait, no, that says China, Grandmother's China." That's the only time I found myself tickled in this movie. I don't have anything good to say.
I don't either. I mean, we'll go into this thinking it would be anything. I think this is Alba's first film since 2019. I don't know what coaxed her back into the limelight, but...
what would you give Trigger Warning?
I mean, it's just utterly pointless. There's nothing redeemable about it. 0.5.
Yeah, I would give this 0.5 out of 5. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.